Hello everyone and welcome back. If you're new here, hi, I'm Saskolinas and today we're going to draw a cherry blossom branch with a bunch of flowers. So grab your pen and let's start drawing. First, I'm going to outline the basic shape. I'm only going to draw from this photo reference, the one section that I'm seeing the most. So I'm also going to link this down below for you to use. You can really zoom in and see the details. And I'm outlining the branch placement. It has like that swoosh shape and also the overall shape of this flower batch that I'm going to draw. It looks like a triangle heart shape if you look at them as an entire shape. So I'm using that, I'm drawing that to help me determine how are the flowers going to be placed. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to work with the most basic shapes to outline the placement for every single flower. I'm starting with the two that I'm seeing fully, one at the top center and the bottom left part, and I'm using them as a guideline for other parts of these other flowers. What's the distance between them? If there's a gap between them, what is the width of the other flower that's overlapping or on the left, on the right side of this one that I'm seeing fully. So with this, I'm using the most rough shape and creating a bunch of elliptical, square, or triangle shapes or anything like that to use as a guideline to draw the petals next. So once I have that, I'm going to determine where is the center part of the flower. In this instance, it's never fully at the center, so I'm looking at the distance between one edge of the guideline for the petals and the placement of the center part, and I'm going to add a circle to determine that it will be a future central part of the flower. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to start outlining the petals. So for this flower, the bottom part that's going towards the center is a bit thinner and it's going towards the edge or the top part of the petal in something that looks like a heart shape that's a bit taller and wider once you go from the center part of the flower. So I'm using that to determine how the petals are going to be placed, and in this instance none of these flowers are from the top. They're always bending in a way, so I'm thinking of some shapes that I'm going to use to help me understand how every single petal behaves in 3D space. So in this instance, I'm following some heart shapes for the ones that I'm seeing fully, and for others where I don't really see the entire petal or it's bent in a way and it looks a bit weirder, I'm thinking of something that looks like a little fan or a teardrop, and seeing if there's something that I need to add, like if it has a pointy end somewhere close to the center part where it's thinner, or close to the very edge at the top of the petal where the end of it is, and I'm using that to really create an organic shape. So if you can see the one that is fully visible, there's only two petals that look like a heart shape. Everything else, it has some pointy bits, or it looks like some tiny fans, or if you remember like ginkgo leaves, it kind of resembles that shape. So I'm thinking of something like that, honestly, when I'm drawing some weirder shapes, and it really helps to determine, it kind of feels like the whole petal is squished, so I'm keeping that in mind when drawing because of its position. And for the other flowers, if they are overlapping, I'm looking at the distance between the original flower that I already draw and the new one that I'm going to add next to it, and seeing what are the easiest parts of it that I'm going to draw first. I usually start with that if it's easier, and then looking at some other placements where I need to add some more details. So the first one, that's the easiest one to draw, is the petal that looks like a heart shape. So start with that, and once you get to more trickier ones, you can think of some basic teardrop shapes or something that looks like a thin leaf or a tiny bowl or something like that, because some of them are bending in that way, and you have to add that little bit of overlap. So think of that as like a tiny bowl or something like that when drawing them. And if you can see, once I'm done with the easier part, I'm going to create the flowers that are a bit off focus. And here I'm using everything that I can see from an image. And for the central part of the flower, my tip is think of something that looks like a daffodil or a cone shape, because if you see all of those tiny circles, they're in a circular motion. All of them are grouped together, and when they go close to the center part of the flower, they resemble a cone shape in a way, but you have a strings and circles and lines that you're going to add. So think of a cone shape as a whole and add several lines that are appearing towards the end of that cone shape, and fill in the middle part and add a bunch of tiny dots that are at the end of every single line that you're going to add for the central part of the flower. And here, because every single flower is located in a different way, you can really think of that cone shape and see how it behaves, if it's going towards the bottom left or the bottom right or the top left or the top right. None of them are really fully at the center, so it will be the best for you to think of a cone shape that's going from the bottom left corner and create a bunch of lines and circles with that information. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to use my 0.5 fineliner to outline everything that I sketched. My suggestion here is, if you're unsure or if you think that something looks a bit odd, really zoom into the photo reference. You can download it and use it wherever you prefer. Also, you can use it on your phone, it'll work perfectly. And really zoom in and see if there's something that you need to add or if you need to remove, especially for those petals that have some pointier ends, or they have some cutouts, or they behave in a way where they overlap, especially when they overlap, when the petal is bending in a way like a tiny bowl or something. And really zoom in to see the details if you want, because it will be way easier for you to learn how every single petal behaves and how the flower behaves as a whole. And once you have that, my suggestion also would be to go a bit messier while drawing the petals, because if you think of it, it's not always as perfect as a fake flower. Real flowers are a bit more organic. They have those cutouts and some texture at the edge or at the end of the petals. So you can really do a couple of wavy lines here and there, and a bit, some of them that are a bit straighter towards the bottom part of the petal, because it always connects in a thinner way compared to the other more circular heart-shaped part that's a bit wider. So you can do a mix of them here and there when you see that fits best. And for the central part where you need to add a bunch of lines and circles, my suggestion is to start small, add a couple of them to really fill in that circular cone-shaped motion with a bunch of lines, and add a couple of circles at the end of every single one. And if you see that you need a bit more, my suggestion is to start adding circles only. And if you need to, you can add a couple of lines here and there. If you use ink, pens, fine liners, or anything like that, my suggestion is to not add too much at once, because it may lose those details that you can see in the picture. So start a bit smaller and see if you need to add a couple of more lines. But if you need to add more circles to visually fake that look, my suggestion is to start adding a couple more circles first and see if you need to add a couple more lines. Maybe not. Maybe adding a couple more circles will be good enough, because you can follow the existing placement of some other ones that you've created and see if you can add some of them next to, with a tiny gap between them, to really fill in that space and create that center part. And here you can really go in and notice how much do you want to add for every single flower. And here really zoom in, see how the flower behaves, and add what you need, and see if there's anything that you need to remove. Because If you need to shade in something, you can always use thinner fineliner or even technical pencil or a pencil or anything like that to not create too much and lose the details. Once you have everything outlined, you can start creating some shading on the petals. I prefer to do that because it will add a bit more dimension, but if you want to leave this as a more of a minimal type of drawing, you can stop now and you will have a finished piece already. And if you want to add a couple of more details like me, I'm going to use a technical pencil to add some shading and some more dimension to these flowers. I'm starting from the central part, shading that in, especially in some instances where I see that it could use some more shading, but I'm still unsure if it's going to be too much. It's always best to start with any type of pencil first to see how that's going to look before using any sort of inks or anything like that. So I'm doing that first, and once I have that, I'm going to, if I see fit, use a fine liner to add a bit more shading. For the petals, I'm starting from the central part of the flower towards the edge of every single petal, and I'm following that shape. The central part of the petal is a pretty much a straight line, maybe not always. Sometimes it follows that slightly curved, not really a C, maybe like a comma shape or something like that. And when I'm going closer to the wider part of the petal, I'm trying to follow that center and moving the line close to the wider part of the petal and basically branching that out like a tree. And once I'm happy with that, every single petal is shaded in that way. Some of them that are, looking like a teardrop or bending and overlapping with the edge that's appearing closer to me. It's not fully visible. I'm only going to shade in some details. So in that instance, I'm going to use that guideline to create those slightly curved shapes and follow the placement and the way that the petal behaves. And once I do that, once everything is shaded in and I'm happy with the result, I can go in with the fine liner to add only a couple of lines because I tend to do a bit too much and it can be a bit too much. So I'm only doing a couple of lines because I have already a lot of shading with the technical pencil. Mostly I'm using the fine liner to outline that center line a bit more and also to add a couple of details here and there for every single one where I see that it fits best. A couple of lines here and there would be good enough. If you start by adding too much shading, if you have a thicker pen or even if you like to add a lot of details like me, it could be a bit too dark compared to the photo reference. So once I'm happy with all of that and I see that it has a lot of shading, I'm fine with the result, I can go in and add a couple of more lines or shading going from the edge of the petal toward the center. So basically in reverse to shade in that part, because with the first one I'm not going to touch that part at all. And with this I'm starting with the center as always with a straight line, and as I'm going, not really a straight line, sometimes it's again wavy, it depends on the petal placement, but I'm following that edge and how the width of the flower behaves. So I'm following that pattern, I'm following the lines of the flower, and I'm adding a couple of shorter ones to shade in the edge of the petal to add a bit more dimension. So going from the very edge close to the center and always remembering that Once I'm at the wider points of the petal, I'm always trying to use a slightly curved shape to connect and create that shading close to the central part of the petal. So it's always a bit of a like a swoosh shape that's going from the edge towards the center. And once I'm fine with the end result, that would be it. So the drawing is complete. We followed a couple of steps from the rough shape with some messy lines to an outline of how everything is going to look, to an ink drawing and a drawing that's fully shaded in. So if you're happy with this tutorial, please consider subscribing and also comment down below. Let me know what you think about this one, if you found it helpful. Share your suggestions or anything that you have in mind. And thanks for watching. As always, I will see you in my next video. Bye.